So I've had this Ginseng Ficus or Ficus Microcarpa for about 7 years now, and it's had its fair share of ups and downs. I'm no bonsai expert by any means, but I did want to share what I have learned in these beginning years of taking care of this bonsai. And I do this in hopes that you can learn from my mistakes and can have a more smooth bonsai journey than maybe I have. Before I start, one thing that I do not regret is the bonsai pot that I have. Though my ficus is probably a little too small for it, and we'll talk about that later. It is really well made, it has a drainage hole, it has this nice little wooden tray, and I love the way it looks. If you are in the market for looking for a bonsai pot, I highly recommend this one, and I will link it down below in case you are interested. Okay, let's dive right in. My first mistake was not having a clear vision for my bonsai and what I wanted it to become. Sadly, I would kind of neglect it, and slowly over time, it became a plant that I had to fix rather than something that I was just helping along the way to fulfill this vision that I had for it. So my recommendation is just to be diligent about checking in on your bonsai. From here on out, this is what I would do. About every 3 months, I would consider two of the following: either pruning it or rewiring it to help it grow in the way that you want it to. And then about every year or so, I would consider checking in on its roots and refreshing the soil for it. Another mistake I made was not fertilizing it or not being on top of it. I would do it very sporadically, which was not ideal. Fertilizing is really key for a bonsai to reach its full growth potential and have all of the nutrients that it needs, especially when bonsais are usually being grown in such small pots. You can use a specific fertilizer to the species that you're growing, or you can use a general all-purpose fertilizer. That's what I was using. It was a 10-15-10. I'll link that down below too if you are wondering what kind I used. But I would suggest using fertilizer during seasons of growth for your bonsai, whether that's in the spring or summer months, or for some people it's in the winter months because that low winter sun is really streaming into their windows, giving their bonsai a lot more light than they normally would get inside. But just be diligent about fertilizing it every month as it is in those stages of growth. And another tip when it comes to fertilizing, err on the side of not doing enough fertilizing rather than too much, because too much can lead to fertilizer burn and could also kill your bonsai because it is under a lot of stress. And also try not to fertilize right after you have rewired it, pruned it, or redone its pot, as fertilizing can kind of act as another stress, and if you add that stress on top of other stressors you're putting on it, it could be too much for the plant to handle. So I like to wait a few weeks if I have just done a big pruning session to add fertilizer to my bonsai, just so I can space out those stressors. Okay, next mistake was probably my biggest one. So most bonsais are grown outdoors, and I would say the exception is probably the Ginseng Ficus. It's more of an indoor species and can be grown indoors full time. And my biggest mistake with that was not giving it enough light. I do have other ficuses that are not bonsais that do just fine with kind of minimal lighting, but bonsais, I don't think you can really get away with that as much. So for a time, I had it in a spot that was not very well lit, and it went downhill very fast. It lost a lot of its leaves and just wasn't thriving. So giving it enough light, whether it's filtered light or maybe even a little bit of direct sunlight, is ideal, will let your bonsai thrive, and is really crucial for it to have optimal growth and not going downhill like mine did. Another mistake was putting my bonsai in too big of a pot. Or maybe this wasn't a mistake. Let me explain. So first of all, it's the general rule of thumb to put your bonsai in a pot that is only 2/3 the height of the tree. So the pot that I currently have would be perfect for a much bigger bonsai, but there's actually a practice used in the bonsai world where you can take your bonsai and put it either in open soil outdoors or in a larger pot to promote your bonsai thickening. And once it has done that, you can take your bonsai and stick it back in its smaller pot. So perhaps my big pot could just be a temporary step on its rehab journey. But usually you should be putting your bonsai in a pot that is 2/3 the height of the tree. So due to all of these mistakes, I'm currently in a rehab zone with my bonsai. It's looking a little scraggly right now, but I'm hoping it will bounce back. And here is what I'm doing to rehab my bonsai from the mistakes that I've made. So number one, I have placed it in a much sunnier space really giving it that sun so that it can bounce back. 2, I've repotted it to let the plant thicken and kind of have a break from its smaller pot. 3, I've tried applying Kiki paste. You may have heard of it. It's a plant hormone in a paste that when you place it on a plant, whether it's an open wound or on a node, it can promote branching and new growth. I've seen it work really well with monsteras, with pothos plants, and also with ficus species, which is why I decided to try it. It's had minimal success so far. There've been a few spots of new growth, but so far it hasn't wowed me. Maybe you'll have more success with it if you are needing more branching to come in. And then my last step for the rehab process, I have stripped my bonsai of all its foliage in hopes that it will come back, and it will come back stronger and more full. I'm crossing my fingers on this one. I'm kind of in the middle of this whole process, hoping that I can get my bonsai back to full growth. If not, I may have to start over. I think that's part of the learning process, but hopefully with you watching this video, you won't have to make the same mistakes I did and have to go through this whole remedy process like I am having to go through. So I hope this video helps you going forward with your bonsai, whether it's an outdoor bonsai or a ginseng ficus like mine is. And if you want more helpful houseplant content, feel free to subscribe. I'm always trying to come out with content to help houseplant owners like yourself. And thank you so much for watching this video.